Hello everybody, so how are we doing today? So I'm amping up my normal volume of videos from 4 to 6 today because I found some really good stories, boy let me tell you. Now, this one is going to bother the men amongst us. This is from RT, as for most of the stories are today. There's at least one from Reuters and another from Reason and some news source I found. But this story says... Attack on white and male. Moon landing proves no U.S. achievement is too big for liberals to destroy. Specifically the far left, the man-hating far left, the radical femmes, and so forth. Attempts to diminish the triumph of Apollo 11 and to reassign credit don't just taint the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, but presage the technological decline of the U.S. if it persists with identity politics. While the Founding Fathers now rarely mentioned in the media without side notes about their slave ownership, and the Betsy Ross flag is offensive to Colin Kaepernick and Nike, there is nothing new about liberal attempts to strike at the very heart of American identity. But leaving aside the conspiracy theorists, the moment Neil Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon on July 20th, 1969, was actually such a universal milestone that to qualify it seems a fight against human endeavor itself. I agree. What are they saying about it exactly? Because a lot of people, even RT, will fall into this trap of thinking that the very loud far left somehow amounts for the majority of liberals. Although it is starting to become that very rapidly, I will admit. It is beginning to become that. It's becoming more and more common thanks to the Democratic Party shifting further left. Anyway, heroes retconned. It would seem like the more logical route for those who resent that this was a feat of white, unwoke America would be to try and diminish their role in favor of supposedly unsung heroes. Hidden Figures, the Oscar-winning film from 2016, was the perfect archetype of this revisionist history, exaggerating and fictionalizing the role of a cadre of politically suitable black women who did an entirely replaceable job and were no more important than thousands of others involved. Citation needed, because that's new to me. This way everyone would get to celebrate their own role models, even though in time such worthy changes of focus can end up with grotesque urban myths, like Crick and Watson stealing the Nobel Prize from the actually dead Rosalind Franklin. Moving on, it says, celebrating white men in the age of Trump. But while this unifying narrative where people of different races and varying attainments are placed alongside each other in anniversary pieces, a more sour radicalized note has begun to surface compared to celebrations even 5 years ago in the prelapsian era of Barack Obama. It is not yet dominant but persistent enough to be more than a coincidence. The culture that put men on the moon was intense, fun, family, unfriendly, and mostly white and male, tweeted the Washington Post over a behind-the-scenes look at the list of those involved in the program. Yep, that's WAPO for you. In archival Apollo 11 photos and footage, it's a Where's Waldo exercise to spot a woman or person of color. Continued in the article itself. Why does that matter? Why does it matter? Why does everything have to be diversified? Exactly. Can't we just ignore the fact that he was white and accept the fact that he was human and therefore a role model to everybody, not just black people or white people or whatever? Can we accept that premise? We chose to go to the moon, or at least some did. Watching documentary film Apollo 11, it is impossible not to observe that nearly every face you see is white and male, Left Wing magazine New Statesman wrote in a recent piece. A recent Guardian review of the documentary Armstrong features the writer talking about good old boys from NASA, elderly white men, every one of them, who you suspect are still pining for the days of American life when men were men and women waited by the phone in headscarves, though no evidence is given for the assertion. Why wasn't Von Braun a black woman? This is not bigoted, but astonishing in its unfairness. Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins could not have helped being white at birth. George Mueller and Max Faggot, I think that says F-A-G-G-E-T, were not proverbial mediocre white men. Their deeds are tangible. No one at NASA could have helped living in the 1960s America or made its social structures, workplaces, roles, and demographics fit in with 2019 journalists' conceptions of, for God's sake, many were Germans who had served the Nazi Party with varying degrees of reluctance during World War II. Operation Paperclip. Before being whisked away through Operation Paperclip. Yeah, it mentions it. How do they fit into 21st century privilege hierarchies? Could Werner von Braun have been an African-American woman from Louisiana? Let's be clear. Their privilege hierarchies are made up. They're man-made. They invented them. End of story. Like I said, why does it matter that he was a white man? Maybe just accept the fact that he was a man, as in a member of the human species, and therefore a role model for everybody. This is the problem of identity politics. It divides everyone up and doesn't allow for social cohesion. It breaks social cohesion apart. It creates a form of toxic tribalism that forces everyone to turn on one another. And this is something the left does very, very well and has been doing for decades, possibly even centuries. Like, we're talking, like, think socialism and how, or rather I should say communism, and how it vilified the poor against the rich, turning them against one another. It's a classic example. Anyway, America weighs itself down, and handicap becomes the key word. Rewriting history is a crucial weapon in the long-term culture war for the left. Disappointed so often at the ballot box, but the implications of this go far beyond the past. At the very edge of technological and scientific progress is a meritocracy. You can't make someone a genius by appointing them. And of all the social changes, the key innovators at NASA, and more importantly Silicon Valley, remain men and predominantly white, though more often Asian. Whether it is more due to their superior opportunities, education, or creativity, Elon Musk or Larry Page look just like the fathers of the space program. Yet to avoid ever producing a picture like the sea of white shirts and black ties and pale arms at Launch Operations Center 50 years ago, there are demands for rectification for diversity, essentially for positive discrimination. It in itself is a form of racism. How about we stop worrying about the skin color of the person who gets the job and instead worry more about how they're qualified to do it? Is a common sense policy like that so evil? But picking people for posts on the basis of historic justice, skin color, and chromosome combinations is a recipe for uncompetitive organizations where the most talented never succeed or merely drag along the quota fillers. And America's rivals are not standing still, not just Russia now, but China, India, and others. They would have no better chance to overtake the U.S. in whatever in this century's version of space race than if that nation decided to spit on its own achievements and replace them with dogma. And that's exactly what's going on. The far left is spitting on American achievements and replacing it with dogmatic bullshit. And they allow this because? Who radicalized the far left in the first place anyway? That's what I want to know. The fact that they're radicals can no longer be in question. My question is, who radicalized them in the first place? Who was the influencer that pushed them to where they are? That's what I want to know. I'll either have to research that or have one of you lovely people down in the comment section let me know what you think. Because I'd be very interested in knowing at this point. Because while I'm more interested in global politics, and that's what I mostly tackle, every now and again something a little more domestic comes my way that I figure, you know what? This needs to be talked about. Anyway,